Hey there everyone, Luke here, and this week's Doctor Stone chapter was good, but nothing really major happened in this chapter. Nothing really major happened. No. Oh, hi Stanley. Fancy meeting you here. Yeah, I'm sure Stanley will not play a single role in this chapter or any of the upcoming chapters. Okay, if you didn't get a hint of this from the intro there, we got Stanley back. Yes, we finally getting kicked off Stanley. I know I'm excited. I know some other people are excited because we get our favourite Doctor Stone bad boy back, but we'll get into that when we get into it. But for now, this will be chapter 220 titled "A Desire for All." Now, obviously, with this chapter, you obviously expect it to be a Ryusui chapter, and yeah, it's pretty much a Ryusui chapter, but more like a culmination of his character arc up until this point, and where it might actually go from moving forward in the chapters to come. But anyway, it opens up with Ryusui giving quite possibly the craziest face ever. I mean, how do you explain that face? Seriously, how do you explain that face? But anyway, we have him just gushing over the Senku 11, obviously a reference to the Apollo 11 moon landing mission, and it seems like they are going ahead with the whole 5 pieces that are going to connect together to form a spaceship, because I do count that there are 5 pieces on here, and we have Gen saying, ever since the Ryusui was promised a ride in space, we have Gen, Suika and Fran basically completing the statement here. Ever since the Ryusui was promised a ride into space, he's been over the moon, naturally, as one who desires all. Yeah, this whole desire thing is gonna come into the forefront in this chapter and showcase just how much of the desire Ryusui has, but how much that can also limit him at times. We have them all saying that it really is an accurate scale model and it's freaky, but it really helps them to understand what they're working with, just like how they whipped up the Perseus by blowing up Ryusui's itty bitty model, which, nice callback that, okay, so this is kind of going to be like the actual rendering of the spaceship, and as we know, there's going to be millions of components basically working around the clock to actually get this up and running. But I'm glad that I've just got to say right off the bat, glad that the author, like Inagaki, is actually taking some time. Okay, step back. We've got all the pieces in place to actually get to the moon. Now we're just going to figure out the step-by-steps of actually getting to lift off, because remember, they still have yet to build the damn spaceship. They have yet to build the spacesuits, because the spacesuits we saw at the end of the last chapter, yeah, that was all imaginary. They still have yet to build the spacesuits. But yeah, Ryusui says, "Behold my spaceship in a bottle minus the bottle." Come on, Ryusui, it's not hard to get a bottle in the stone world now. You've got glass, it's not hard to get one, so just get one, or get one already. But anyway, continuing on, as Sai is programming something, he says to himself, since we were kids, whenever Ryusui made his model ships, he'd always rope me in and have me run numbers. And we get a flashback of Ryusui and Sai as kids with Ryusui designing a ship, an actual ship, like kind of like the Perseus, the original Perseus, and saying the ship's not content just being a model. I'm gonna set sail someday on a real ship of my own. Yeah, give it maybe a few thousand years, baby Ryusui. You might just get there. Just saying that's how it works in Doctor Stone. He goes on to say, Sai, can you program a sailing simulator for my ship? Now, this was a nitpick on Party John's part, because we've just done the live stream with each other. So he said that this was kind of like a little bit of a nitpick on his part. The fact that this flashback just seems to kind of go a little bit against the flashbacks before, when Sai, when he was first revived, was absolutely worried to get away from his brother, and we had flashbacks of him just trying to get away from his brother before he jetted off to India. Now, me personally, I just see it as more like, okay, yes, Sai was annoyed at Ryusui a lot of the time, but at the same time, it was like, at the same time, there were moments of like, yeah, come on, we'll do this together. And Ryusui wasn't actually being like majorly desirable in this flashback. It was just like, say, Sai, can you run the program with me of actually getting a sailing simulator, so we can actually simulate what it is to travel around the world on a sailing ship. So that's what I took away from the flashback. Obviously, me and him have a different opinion on it, and if you want to know more about it, go and watch the live stream. It'll be on my channel. But be prepared to grab some snacks, because it is a 3-hour-long live stream that plug there, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we can continue this trend each and every week. I'm looking forward to it. I've been enjoying it so far myself, and yeah, hope you guys can actually come and join us when we actually do the streams. It'll be every week, hopefully every week on a Sunday, maybe around 4 p.m, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 9 p.m, 10 p.m. if you're living in the UK. That's kind of like what we're getting at here. Also, by the way, hope you guys in the UK are not that cold, because we did have snow today. Maybe not as major as the snow we've seen in Dr. Stone, but we still had snow. So hope you guys are keeping nice and warm. I know I am in my nice room here, nice, warm and toasty. And obviously I've got the dressing gown on, so I'm nice and toasty. But anyway, back to the review. We cut away from the flashback as we go back into the present / future / whatever, as we see they're actually getting a flight simulator for our spaceship. Congratulations, Microsoft Flight Simulator for space. Make that happen. I'm sure there is a Microsoft Flight Simulator for space somewhere around here. Somewhere around in this time, which, if there is, I want to play it. Somebody find it for me so that I can actually play it. As we see Yo just playing around with the flight simulator, we get, obviously, Ryusui getting the high score because he's Ryusui, and them saying, well, you broke the record again. This is his live calling after all, as he goes on to say, of course I'm the champ at this stinky sim game, but our special space flight powered by numerous science will be a trip into seriously uncharted waters. Now keep that in mind, the new world science. Keep that in mind to the ending of the chapter, when I'll talk about my thoughts on it. And he goes on to say, experience and intuition forged by the stone world will be the deciding factor. Am I wrong? And this is where we get Ukyo and Nikki giving their take on the situation by saying, sure, but you're pretty damn experienced in that sense too. There's nobody out there who could dream of being a better pilot than you, Ryusui. Now, when Pyjams was talking about the roars, that line was, I believe he said it was something along the lines of, there's no one out there that's better than you, Ryusui. But yeah, as we all know, there's Charlotte and there's Stanley himself, that are obviously more well experienced pilots in that regard. And this is where we get Ryusui thinking like Stoneworld experienced pilots, and we get a flashback to when they first encountered Stanley in America, by saying with them saying they wouldn't be flying so dangerously at all if they didn't intend to attack up in front of the sun. So basically that was in the flashback, and this is where Ryusui kind of gets an idea going through his head here. But we'll come back to that. We'll come back to that later in the chapter. For now, we get them doing target practices for what I assume will be Medusas up in space, as we see Kohaku and Senku basically confirming that there might actually have to be a fight in space itself, even before they get to the moon. There might be another obstacle in place that has stealth technology, kind of like the Medusa had when it was traveling from the moon to Earth. That's kind of what I'm going at here, and there might be something that might actually be a case of, yeah, they'll have to overcome this, which makes the whole line of, yeah, we're going to petrify ourselves even more of a stupid idea. Senior and Senku go on to explain that moon combat is an unknown factor to them, and they have to think about what the ultimate weapon that the Y-Man has, and the weapon that they can't counter against no matter what, no matter 10 billion %, it's impossible to counter. And Chrome says, oh, it's the Medusa, but have we ever been the sort of dummy? And Senku, this is where we get Senku questioning something which I have to scratch my head at. He goes on to say, but have we ever been the sort of dummies to rush to our deaths without a plan? No. Well, except the time when yes, you had a plan of storming the Miracle Cave with Tsukasa, but even after Tsukasa arrived, Crocker didn't have a plan of just confronting him. She just went and confronted him. You you had a similar plan with Ibarra, but again, you were kind of rushing to your devs there because Ibarra was one step ahead of you at the time because he had the earpiece, and you were kind of rushing to your death when you tried to capture Cena because you didn't know exactly how many guards he had, and you were kind of rushing to your death yourself when you were like, okay, we're in South America, we've got the diamonds now, we just have to make sure that Stanley doesn't get his hands on him, and we just have to stall him. So yeah, Senku, you have rushed to your deaths before, but I'm glad that we're actually getting an actual plan here of like, okay, this time we need to actually plan this because we're going into unknown territories here. He says they'll be facing the Medusa with 2 special items of their own. And this is where we get Joel making his reappearance for the first time in quite some time, which I'm kind of disappointed that we didn't get a Joel and Kazuki interaction in this chapter. They could have easily brought Joel from America to Japan, and then it could have been like, hey, you must be Kazuki, great, we can finally have that drink together, but first I just need to show off my new invention. I would have loved to have seen a reaction like that, or maybe just over the phone, over the communication, Kazuki going, oh, so you must be Joel, oh great, I can finally have a conversation with you about our craftsmanship. And Joel will obviously be kind of respectful to Kazuki and be like, yeah, and we can do a toast to each other when we actually come face to face and meet with each other. So yeah, kind of disappointed that we didn't get that, but oh well. The main point of this is that Joel has invented the Resurrection Watch, which of course he invented the watch because he's Joel. The whole idea about it is that the exotic piece contains a small dose of refined fluid. So this is kind of like basically an upgrade of the drip idea that Chrome had about, hey, if we get petrified, why don't we have a drip on us so that we can unpetrify ourselves immediately. So kind of the idea that we're going off here, which is nice that they're actually incorporating ideas that Chrome thought out of the box and actually coming up with inventions to actually combat the Y-Man, because again, now that we're caught up to sort of like the technology that we're accustomed to this day, we can kind of go all out and make items that are not really invented yet. So kind of like these watches that can just splash on with fiber fluid to get you free from petrified stone. He says that when a petrified beam strike is imminent, the user can set the timer for 3 seconds later, 3 minutes later, or however you want, and then they're like, heck yeah, this thing's awesome. We've got to get everyone on Earth wearing these bad things. Worldwide petrification is never going to be a threat to us again. So this is also kind of like an upgrade of the idea that Senku had to throw the refined fluid up and then bring it back down as it's being petrified, which was shown on Treasure Island. So nice thing that actually bringing back old elements and kind of combine them into something new. Sinu also mentions the mountain of Medusa at ground zero, which gets them all getting flashbacks of the fact of, we did mention about the multiple petrification waves that could come, and how could they ever defend against that. And this is where Tsukasa comes in and gives his military strategies right here, which I wouldn't say military strategy, it's just like strategies in general, like he's the general tactician of the group, which people thought that Tsukasa was writing himself out of the story in the last chapter. Well, here's the proof in the pudding that he is not, because he's still the best tactician that they have at this point. He mentions, however, the multi-stage attack as a fatal flaw. Should Y-Man decide to fire consecutive waves of petrification beam, the second and third wave and so on will be delayed, then there's no point to it. That means after the initial attack, there needs to be a countdown before the next one. So him kind of like figuring out, like, okay, so after the initial attack, the second petrification beam will come in a bit of delay, then the third one, and so on and so on. So in order to combat this, they must take action as they showcase a gun, which Senku calls their second and final special item, as we see piling along a mountain of Medusas, and Yon taking a shot at them and basically using it as a way to capture them and sort of like breaking them apart, which they call the net grenade launcher. We then cut to Ryusui, Kohaku, and Senku basically doing target practice with each other, and I love this because it showcases their difference in strengths. Whereas Ryusui's more steady armed, Kohaku's kind of like a bit shaken up, and Senku is kind of like utterly petrified and utterly scared of this. It's kind of like, I've never used a gun before, so I don't know how well I'm going to do it. And of course he misses. Like, seriously, Senku, Did you just inherit Fuku's unlock ability from Undead Unlock? Because it certainly seems like you have. After they eventually managed to break the Medusa that they were using for target practice, this is where we get Senku and Kaku basically commenting on Ryusui by saying, our spacebound Ryusui is taking his job pretty seriously. He realised he can't count on our shooting skills, so he's taking charge like a proper captain. We better try and not be totally useless. And the use of the word captain kind of like gets Ryusui a note of triggering ideas in his head, as we could tonight, where we see everyone sleeping and him moving away from the group as he addresses the elephant in the room. There's a pilot better than me, who also happens to be the world's greatest marksman. So this was something that me and Pyjans really loved about Ryusui's character, showing that yes, even though he has a desire to have everything in the world, there's always going to be points in life where there's always going to be someone better than you out there, and more worthy of a position than you are. And Ryusui's no exception. Like, he's acknowledging, like, okay, yes, even though I really want a space on that spaceship, and I desire space on that spaceship, at the same time, I'm not a pilot. I'm not a trained pilot, and I'm he was probably when he was flying the plane just going off of just basic look from flights from Microsoft Flight Simulator. But even then, this is a totally different experience that they're going through here. They're going into space on uncharted territory, and he has no idea about space travel. Like, he just doesn't. That's out of his league. And as for being a marksman, yeah, he doesn't have the marksman training as someone else out there that we're gonna see in a little bit. You know who it is. There's no beating around the bush with it. But yeah, this is what we loved about him: the fact that even though he decides everything in the world, he's kind of taking a step back here and thinking, like, okay, even though I really want to be the one on the spaceship, at the same time, I know my limitations, and I know there are people out there that are more qualified to be on that spaceship. So I'm willing to put aside my desire and my greediness to be on that spaceship for the benefit of mankind and the benefit of the kingdom of science. So again, we love that about him, the fact that he was able to put his desire to the side, to think, like, okay, what's the best solution what's the best solution to get out of this? Plus, it's not just that; it's the fact that Ryusui is also someone who admits to his mistakes and admits to his shortcomings as well. A perfect example of this is when he didn't want Suika to come along on the Perseus in the first place, but after seeing how well she performed on Treasure Island, he was able to see, like, okay, this was beneficial on her part, and I'm glad she came along, and he acknowledged her as a fully fledged warrior of the Kingdom of Science. So that was the moment that made me really love Ryusui as a character, and why he's one of my top 10 favourite characters. But anyway, he goes over to the cave where they actually kept Tsukasa when he was being frozen. So he's kind of like in Tsukasa's old domain where he was in the refrigerator, as he goes on to say, only those who fought for the Kingdom of Science know about this hidden chamber, the place where our mightiest warrior once stumbled. And I love the fact that they put caution on here, like, caution, do not enter. Because, yeah, there's a seriously badass bad boy in here that you do not want to get tangled up in. As we see him going in, and we see him seeing Stanley side the statue. So, yeah, we're getting Stanley Snyder back in the series, like I said. And also, the beginning of this chapter, that image kind of mirrors the title page of the chapter. So, like I said, really nice touch there. Glad Inagaki did that. But, yeah, so we're getting Stanley back. Now, what does this mean? Like, this chapter, again, like I said, this chapter, really well done. Slow down the pacing immensely, which I'm proud of, and hopefully we can continue this on for maybe the next, like, 4 or 5 chapters, like, where we have the pacing slowed down a bit to kind of have more character interaction moments. Now, what will this mean for the next chapter? Now, my idea is the fact that Ryusui is obviously going to be revive Stanley, and they're probably just going to talk with each other for the whole chapter up until the ending, where Ryusui says, "Yeah, after thinking about it, I'm not the best qualified to be the pilot of the Senku 11, but I know someone else who is." And we see Stanley just walking in, and everyone's just, like, shocked, and this is where we will get the moment that I've been waiting for some time, because it's, if I can go to the chapters, let me just get back. Let me. Oh, they are. It was chapter 176, and it was this chapter right here, this page right here, where we hear Senku, Ishigami, Dr. Sinu, Stanley Slider. These three have yet to be in the same place at the same time, and now they've narrowly avoided a proper encounter. Well, it seems like we're finally actually going to get that encounter. We're finally going to get a moment where we'll have them sitting down together, discussing the situation, and being like, okay, what do you say, Stanley? And it could go one of two ways. It could be like Stanley joins them and we get the caption Stanley Slider joins the party, or it could be like that Stanley and Sinu, now that they're back together, they can continue their quest for world domination and just forget about going to the moon, or something like that. But one thing we do need to talk about, we do need to address at one point, is the traitor. And also as well, even though we won't be getting everyone going into space, maybe we'll actually have video cameras on the spacesuits that can actually live stream from the moon itself, so that everyone could be like communicating with whoever is up on the moon. So it's kind of like a nice way to keep everyone together without having the moon be a cluster of characters, just because we want them all going up here. Now, since Ryusui has kind of been like acknowledging like, okay, I'm not the best suited for this, kind of like what Tsukasa did in the last chapter with Kohaku's like saying like, okay, Kohaku is more suited for moon combat. Ryusui's kind of doing it here like, okay, Stanley's more suited to being a pilot and to being a marksman, which it will be integral in the moon mission. If they actually have to fight something in space, they'll need Stanley's incredible marksman skills. But also as well, we might actually get a moment where Senku relinquishes his seat. So it kind of subverts our expectations fully of it just being Senku, Ryusui, and Tsukasa that we've kind of all been accustomed to be expecting here. And it might actually be tying back to something that Tsukasa said, that Chrome would be more suited to be coming on the moon mission himself, or maybe we'll get Chrome and Suika as kind of like the two people that represent science from Ishigami Village being the ones to actually go up there. Whether that will be true or not, because if that happens and we get Chrome, Suika, Kohaku, and Stanley, that's two men, two women, kind of evenly balances it out. And yeah, that may be the case of that happening. It may not. We'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, glad that we're getting Stanley back, and Party Jams is excited because he seriously expected this would come about, because Stanley is much more suited to be the pilot than Ryusui ever was. But anyway, guys, what did you think of this chapter? Let me know. Like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. And this will be Lasherluke signing off. Later, guys.